Mark Thomas is the Tasmanian President of the Media and Entertainment Arts Alliance, or MEA as we know it. He's one of Tasmania's best media campaign and event designers and managers. Mark's worked with The Examiner newspaper, Tas TV, Win Television and in radio. And he's the author of former Australian Test batsman and Tasmanian captain David Boone's two successful biographies. So if you've read them, that was In the Firing Line and Under the Southern Cross. He's built a successful facilitation business with a range of corporate clients, as well as providing MC and event management skills. And Mark has provided media training for many of Tasmania's leading organisations, both corporate and GBEs. So fantastic to have you introduce Erik today, Mark. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Susan, and welcome to it. Thank you, everybody involved with the Freelance Festival, for having me here. As Susan said, I'm the Tasmanian President of the MEAA. And I'm introducing Erik Black from MediaSuper. Now this year, MediaSuper, as you well know, is the platinum sponsor of the Freelance Festival, which is great. MediaSuper has been a supporter of the freelance community and the pursuit of professional excellence since its inception more than 30 years ago. They proudly support the print, media, entertainment and arts industries by funding internships, education programs and awards that celebrate and support our talented community. From a Tasmanian perspective, MediaSuper has sponsored the Tasmanian Media Awards in multiple categories for perhaps the best part of 20 years, which is how long I've been involved with the awards. Over this time, the past 2 decades, MediaSuper has seen our professions change from booms and busts to ownerships and offshoring, and we're going through that at the moment. But they remain embedded within the Australian context, understanding the unique needs of their members, including many of the people in this Zoom meeting or webinar. As Susan said, my own media background is essentially one of the past. I started with the Examiner newspaper in the mid-80s, that's the 1980s for goodness sake, and worked for 10 years across the full range of media rounds. I moved to television, the old Tas TV, if anybody in the room is old enough to remember Tas TV, and now Win Television in the mid-90s. I went into executive government, worked as a media advisor and did a stint as a ministerial advisor, and then went into PR where I now, as Susan said, I own my own company. I've been the Tasmanian President of the MEAA for the last 10 years. You, on the other hand, as attendees at this year's Freelance Festival, are the future, because freelance is a growing and critical part of the Australian media industry today. As the Tasmanian President, I sit on the national media section of the MEAA. And as you can imagine, much of the discussion and activity for the past few months has been attempting to assist members as mastheads have been shut around Australia, including Tasmania. But there is now a significant freelance presence on the NMS, and I'm committed to taking your issues to this forum as they arise. You can either come to me directly or go to the Tasmanian Victorian Director of the MEAA, who is Adam Portelli, who I hope is back from annual leave as we speak. As I said, today I'm introducing Erik Black from MediaSuper. Now, I know that superannuation is not the most sexy of topics, but it is very important in this time of COVID in which we live, and hopefully when we emerge from this time into the long future. Freelancers, like everybody else in the media community, deserve security and comfort in retirement, but the nature of your work can make this a challenge. Erik is here today to help members and non-members understand more about their own superannuation. Thank you all for having me here today. Have a great festival, and please welcome Erik Black.
Thank you, Mark, and I'd just like to thank Sue for all her hard work putting this festival together. I really wish I could be there in person and meet all of you and go for my morning walk in the Cataract Gorge, but I think we'll have to wait till next time. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging and paying my respects to the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and the traditional owners of the land from which I join you today. And I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the various lands from which you all tune in today, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this festival. And I pay my respects to elders, past and present and emerging, and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters. Now, MediaSuper is very proud I might need some screen sharing.
Oh, yep.
there soon.
Yep. I shall do that for you, Eric. Just one second.
Thank you. But MediaSuper is very proud to be one of the founding sponsors of the Freelance Festival, and we're proud to be associated with such a diverse group of talented people. So welcome all of you who have tuned in today, and I hope everyone has been enjoying the session so far. I know that you're all very passionate about what you do, and I'm really pleased to be here today to be part of this coming together, this sharing of ideas to discuss something that I'm very passionate about, and that's superannuation and really helping people set themselves up for a successful retirement. So if just one person leaves here today resolved to tune up their super and get it into shape, I'll feel like I've made a difference. So just gonna get some screen sharing things going here. So I think that we all know somewhere in the back of our minds that super is pretty important. Mark touched on it, and Sue, something that we don't really think about right at the present necessarily. But I reckon superannuation ties in quite neatly with the general theme of this festival, so the future of work. Because super is really all about the future. It's about your future. And if you take just a second to think about it, well, why do we work? For the lucky few of us, we do it because it's a passion, a calling. But there's the more practical reasons as well, to put a roof over our heads, some clothes on our back, food on the table, of course. But probably the most easily overlooked reason why we work is to put aside a bit for retirement. So today I'm going to give you a brief overview of MediaSuper, not too much of a plug, and just a super quick investment update. And then I'll really get stuck into why super is so important and how it pertains to freelancers like yourselves, and some of the issues that your community face and how we can overcome these to build the foundations for a comfortable retirement. And I'll talk a little bit about the COVID-19 early release of super, and I'll take some questions at the end. But please post your questions in the Q&A area. And if I don't get to them, I certainly will email you a response. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is general information. And it doesn't take into account your personal situation or financial objectives. So before you rush out there and take action on everything I say, you really need to consider if it's appropriate for you. And you can consult our product disclosure statement, or look at on our website, or speak to your financial advisor. Just a little bit about MediaSuper. Well, our members are just like you. They're the people who entertain us, the people who inform us, the people who challenge us to open our minds and subsequently our hearts. Our members, well, they're the creative people of Australia. And with 76,000 members across journalism, film, music, television, radio, goes on and on, theater, dance, print, visual arts, graphic design, publishing, gaming, and over $5.5 billion of funds under management, and something like 14,000 employers, MediaSuper is the industry for creative people. And look, I just kind of took it for granted that everyone knows what an industry fund is, until I was having this socially distant conversation with one of my more socially awkward neighbors the other day. Brilliant guy, works for CSIRO, but he had no idea what an industry fund really was. So if you don't know, industry funds aren't set up to provide returns for corporate shareholders. They exist to benefit our members and return profits solely to our members. So what you'll find with industry funds is typically they have low fees, quite a few, wide array of investment options, insurance that's very competitively priced, and financial planning, and the ubiquitous gang sign. So And that's exactly what MediaSuper is. It's a true industry fund that not only engages with, but it gives back to our community. And we're exceptionally proud of the partnerships that we're involved in. Mark talked about this a little bit earlier, but the internships we fund, the awards nights we sponsor, our partnerships with MIA and the Equity Foundation. And here's an exhaustive selection of our industry partnerships, which are so important, so mutually constructive, especially during these stressful times. So there we go. That's better. So organizations like the Live Performance Australia, the Walkley Foundation, Women in Print, Women in Media, AGDA, the Australian Writers Guild, and one that's particularly topical, the Alliance for Journalists' Freedom, and of course the Launceston Freelance Festival. So in a similar vein to our industry partnerships, we're extremely proud of our involvement with Fulcrum Media Finance. And it's an investment vehicle, and through this investment, MediaSuper we provide cash flow to Australian and New Zealand feature films, documentaries, and television projects. So, and that's through a $80 million revolving loan facility. And to date, there's something like 170 projects that have been funded and over $230 million invested. So I know we have some filmmakers with us today. And effectively, what we're doing is providing cash flow to finance these productions against the producer's tax offset. And what it does, it helps get these projects off the ground. And MediaSuper, we don't choose who receives funding. That's all done through Fulcrum. And all returns, they're not contingent on box office success. But what's so great about this partnership is films such as Lion, The Dressmaker, Ride Like a Girl, and more recently, The True History of the Kelly Gang. And television shows such as Diary of an Uber Driver or The Hunting, Rake, I quite like Rake actually, and Upper Middle Bogan, just to name a few. They get to be made here in Australia onshore. And this enables Australian writers and directors and actors to produce, and producers and crew, to tell the Australian stories and perpetuate and preserve Australian culture. So it's a win-win for our members, as it provides employment in the sector and substantial yet low risk returns for their super balances. So a quick investment update. Look, the bottom line is 2020 has been a shocker. The industry went from gangbuster returns in January and early February, and then everything hit the proverbial fan, hitting a low in the third week of March. Share markets fell close to 30%. Fortunately, balanced funds in the industry or in super industry did not fall nearly that much. If you look at our statistics, MediaSuper is faring better than the median. Look for a smallish medium fund. We do punch well above our weight. So last year, for example, we were the number 3 highest performing fund in the balanced option, and we spent a lot of time in the top quartile of fund performance. But look, this year's a little bit all over the shop, but I'm just pleased that we're performing better. If you look at this 10-year figure, before 2020, that would have been in the 8s. So Super's taken a hit, but the thing to remember is it's a long-term investment. So if you look at a graph of the ASX over the last 30 years, it will go from the bottom left of the screen all the way to the top right, with a few jaggedy bits along the way. So it's not something that we don't feel that we'll recover from. These things always bounce back in. We would really encourage people to get some financial advice before they make any drastic changes to their investment options. I know why people become freelancers, and there's a number of reasons. It's not always by choice, but one is obviously work-life balance, and you get to spend more time with your family, and the choice of what you want to work on, when you want to do it, and where you want to do it. And so it's that freedom, being your own boss. So look, I hope you don't take exception with me bossing you around a little bit today about your super. And whilst freelancing comes with all the benefits that I just said, there are some trade-offs, and particularly when it comes to super. So look, there's a dearth of statistics on freelancers specifically. There is, however, quite a lot of information on the self-employed when it comes to superannuation. And what the data from ASFA, which is the Association of Superannuation Funds of Australia, tells us, and just brace yourself because I'm going to get a bit statistical on you, but I think you'll be okay. As Mark said earlier, the self-employed and freelancers, it's quite naturally a growing segment of the workforce. And something that I wasn't aware of is the self-employed are slightly older, with 33% being over the age of 55. And when it comes to super, this is a bit that's a little bit scary. So only 20% of as many as 20% of self-employed have no super at all. And so that's a bit shocking, really. And as self-employed people get older and approach retirement, in that age bracket between 60 and 64, only 30% have over $100,000. And if you look at PAYG employees, 60% of them would have over $100,000 in that same age cohort. So now in that age bracket for self-employed men, their average balance is $143,000 compared to $283,000 for your normal employees. So roughly twice the amount. And we've all heard about the disparity in superannuation balances between men and women. So it's no surprise that it would be quite pronounced for women who are self-employed as well. So it's 83,000 compared to 175,000 for that just close to retirement age bracket. So if that doesn't make you feel great, well, just wait, there's a little bit more here. Most freelancers will earn their money from their skills, their writing ability, the amazing photographs they take, the eye-catching graphic designs they make. But despite having a successful career, many freelancers might retire with fewer business assets. So, you know, it's not like the lady who owns the dry cleaners down the road. She has a whole business she can sell. But many freelancers, they might have a MacBook Pro. And so I know you might be sitting there thinking, yeah, I knew what I was getting into when I got into freelancing. I wouldn't have a massive super balance, but at least I don't have to wake up at the crack of dawn and commute and spend time in the office with people I don't really like, play office politics, etc. But be forewarned, all the stress that you've eliminated from your life, it might just add up to an extra decade of longevity. And as a result, a longer retirement to fund. But all joking aside, it's probably worth asking yourself, what kind of retirement do I want to have? So do you want to be eating beans on toast or making a champagne toast to the love of your life on our 75th birthday in Paris in the 8th arrondissement? And well, hopefully we're able to travel again by then. But I think most of us probably aspire to the latter scenario. And unfortunately, there's sometimes a bit of a gap between how we see ourselves in retirement and what we can realistically achieve. And there's some reasons for this. You know, you often hear people that are my age, late 40s, say, geez, I still feel like I'm 27. And look, there's actually been some studies done at Stanford and UCLA where they used neuroimaging to examine brain activity. And what the results showed is that there was more in common with how we thought of our future selves and how we thought of complete strangers than how we think of our present selves. So, and there's some great work that's been done in the field of behavioral economics and that really tie into some of the issues that freelancers face when deciding whether or not to contribute more to super. And one of the things that is loss aversion, and that's the tendency that for people to give more weight to losses than to gains. And this centers around the idea that if you have to put money into super yourself, it's seen either consciously or subconsciously as a loss. It's a reduction in your take-home pay. And you know, that's less money to spend on needs and wants. Whereas someone like me, who's getting paid super automatically and not having to reach into my wallet to contribute, well, I'd never really look at it as, oh, there goes thousands of dollars each year into that stupid super. Well, I wish they'd just give me the extra cash so I could chuck it on the mortgage. Yeah, so it's a totally different thing when you're having to pay for it yourself from your own bank account. But anyway, let's have a look at what a comfortable retirement looks like. And well, what is a comfortable retirement? Well, that's a good question, really. It's pretty subjective. Depends on how you live. You could have a champagne lifestyle or be frugal McDougal or somewhere in between. But ASPA have quantified this, and they say that a comfortable retirement requires $44,000 per year for a single person and $62,000 for a couple. And if you want to look at it as a lump sum, it'd be $640,000 for a couple or $545,000 for a single person. So, and they've qualified this as well. So they assume that you own your own home outright in both a modest retirement scenario and a comfortable retirement. I'm not going to really talk about the age pension. And they also assume that you're relatively healthy. Now, I kind of take a little bit of exception to this because there is a significant percentage of older adults that do have some type of disability. And we all hear about the increase in non-communicable disease in the Western world, such as diabetes, cancer, heart disease. So, assuming that people are going to be healthy is a little bit of a stretch, but that's all right. So what does a comfortable retirement look like? Well, a comfortable retirement, you get to go on a holiday. So you get to go on a domestic holiday in Australia, see the big prawn or the big pineapple, where a modest retirement might mean going camping or going down to the beach. Comfortable retirement, you get to eat out in good restaurants and have quality food, not so much in modest retirement. Own a reasonable car. I love this one. This makes it for number 4 on the list. You get to afford bottled wine. It's just so Australian, and as opposed to cask wine. And good clothes. You get to have regular haircuts, take part in regular leisure activities, and have all the gadgets at home, as well as being able to upgrade your house from time to time. Whereas a modest retirement, you wouldn't be able to do that. And both scenarios assume that you would have private health insurance. So holidays, restaurants, good clothes, that sounds pretty good to me. Where do I sign up? But seriously, you have to ask yourself where you want to be in retirement. Drinking bottled wine or the goon bag. So how do we get to this promised land where the cars are reasonable and the leisure activities are regular? It's really quite simple. It's as simple as put money into super. So we're pretty lucky here in Australia to have super put aside for us for our life after work. And for most working people, it's a key part of our pay packet. And over time, it'll more than likely become one of your largest financial assets. But for you lot, you have to take care of that yourselves. And I've spoken to freelancers that have put off contributing to super for so long that they weren't aware of what normal people receive for super contribution. And I'm sure there's a couple of people out there today that are in the same boat. And so if you don't know, it's 9.5%. Now, most freelancers won't have super paid on their behalf. And of course, it's not compulsory for the self-employed to contribute, but there are circumstances where freelancers should have their super paid by those who retain their services. And I'll just add that a lot of people think that just because they have an ABN, that they shouldn't receive super payments. And that's not always the case. And so there's some commonly held misconceptions out there that might prevent super contributions from being paid, such as, oh, well, the work's only short term, or the person doing the work, maybe they've agreed to an arrangement that says that they're not going to pay super, or the freelancer has provided an invoice, for example. Or simply, it might just be industry practice, and it's just not what's done in your particular field. But the thing is none of these things that I just said necessarily disqualify you from receiving super. And under superannuation legislation, and look, this is from 1992, but it's still the law, I think it's 1992, that a person who is paid to perform services related to the making of a film, tape, disc, television, or radio broadcast would be they'd be considered as an employee for superannuation purposes and should have super paid by whomever has retained their services. Okay, so look, I know we have a lot of journalists with us today, but I want to bring this up as we have plenty of members who are Jills of all trades. And I can think of as some of our members right in Tassie who wear the multiple hats of journalist, public speaker, voiceover artist, actor. And more journalists are producing recorded content as podcasts. So it might be something that you'll want to look into. Here are some links that to the ATO website that will tell you if you should be entitled to super. So there's an employee contractor decision tool, superannuation guarantee eligibility tool, and unpaid super. So if you do think that you had super that should have been paid to you, it will help you figure out how to get that paid. So look, I'll send these around in an email afterwards, so you don't need to furiously scribble these down. But look, there's also probably a few people with us today that this might apply to, but another part of the superannuation legislation that they talk about, if you're a sports person, artist, or entertainer who's paid to perform, present, or participate in any music, play, dance, entertainment, sport, and here's part that I think might be a little bit more relevant, display or promotional activity or similar activity. You might have super might be payable to you. So have a look at these links, and you might just be surprised. It's worth having a look. And look, I realize that there's probably a bit of a disconnect between what possibly should happen as far as super being paid to freelancers and what actually happens. And you probably don't want to go potentially bidding yourself out of work by tacking on an additional 9.5% to your quote, but it's worth knowing if you're technically eligible. And if your relationship with the people who are hiring you is good, it might be worth having that conversation. But realistically, short of legislative change that uses carrots or sticks to entice the self-employed and freelancers to make mandatory contributions, it's really going to be up to you. So let's have a look at what could happen if you actually started contributing to super in earnest. I want to just do a little exercise in compound interest. So if you look at this slide, this is probably more, just gives you an idea of like how from little things, big things grow type of thing. It assumes that you're 21 years old, but you can see that it makes a huge difference. $20 a week can mean an extra $165,000 in retirement. But let's have a look at, I want to do a little exercise in compound interest so you can get an idea what extra contributions might look like for somebody who's sort of mid to late career. And look, there's all sorts of calculators out there online, and MediaSuper have some as well, but I find this one pretty easy to use. It's quite simple and straightforward, and there's no need to log into anything. So that's great. Here we go. Can everyone see this okay, Sue?
Sorry, yes, they can, Eric.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so let's say you have $100,000 in super, and okay, let's figure freelancer, reasonable salary at $80,000, so 9.5% of that is $76,000. And you don't get around to doing it all that often, but say at the end of the year, you put a lump sum in, and you're 45 years old, so you still got 20 years to work. And we'll look at an interest rate of 6%. So that's kind of a historic super return of 8% minus 2% inflation. And let's see what that adds up to. So over 20 years, just by putting in that 9.5% net starting now, putting it at once a year, you'd end up with $600,000 in super at retirement. Now this isn't exact, but it gives you an idea, and you can go have a fiddle around yourself. I'll send the link to it as well, and you can plug in your own numbers. But let's have a look that if, okay, so that was once a year top up to super. But let's have a look if you decide to do this on a more ongoing basis. So you do it $633 a month, you're doing it monthly, and that's $7,600 divided by 12. So you can see here that that's quite a significant difference. By just putting in monthly and having that interest compound monthly, we're looking at a difference of 23,000. But all right, so that's great. We all know that we want to put money into super. But let's see what happens if we put it off. We want to go on a holiday, or we're just not earning that much. We might have taken time off for to raise a child or something like that. So we've taken some time off. We're going to put it off for 2 years. And what you'll see is the total, what you'll end up with after 20 years is only 538,000. So it's really in your best interest not to put that off. You'll get a much bigger super balance, 623,000 versus 538,000. So it's pretty significant. And I know it's all very well to say, oh, put money into super, let compound interest work its magic. But if it were that easy, we'd all be doing it. And there wouldn't be any point in me lecturing you today. So probably the worst enemy of people topping up their super or starting regular contribution strategy is the dreaded P word, procrastination. That's 5 syllables that stop us from quitting smoking, stops us from starting daily exercise or eating healthily, and of course it stops us from putting money into super. So volumes upon volumes have been written about procrastination and savings behavior, and that's because most of us are guilty of it. And look, I've interviewed some of our members who I happen to know are freelancers and have a pretty decent super balance. And I asked them what they do to keep on track with contributing. And some contribute every time that they receive a partial upfront payment. So if they get paid maybe 50% in advance, some of them will put money into super straight away. Some pay that 9.5% when they're invoicing. Others that I've spoken to take on 1 or 2 extra jobs, and the revenue from which is solely for super contributions. And some others paid in super every quarter when they did their BAS statements, or at each month when they paid their household bills. And of course, there's always the lump sum contribution where there's, when there's a big windfall or at the end of the financial year. But the thing that they all had in common was there was a routine to making contributions, a habit. And look, I don't want to tell you how to suck eggs, but if you think back to what I said earlier about loss aversion, it's probably easier to swallow smaller, more frequent contributions, but whatever works best for you. And making these ongoing contributions, it's never been easier. So most super funds will have a way for you to pay into super, and most banks, at least the bigger ones, I'm not quite sure about your credit unions, they'll allow you to make recurring pay payments, and so giving you the ability to just more or less set and forget. But aside from actually growing your super balance and being more likely to drink bottled wine in retirement, making ongoing super contributions can have some real tax advantages as well. So, we have Asha. She's a freelancer, earns $80,000 a year, and contributes 10 grand into super. And she's only going to get charged 15% on this money as opposed to the marginal tax rate. And when all is said and done and all the computations are finalized, she's going to have a tax savings of $1,950. So if you ask me, that's way better than a kick in the teeth, and definitely worth doing it. So how much should you contribute? Well, as I said before, the super guarantee is 9.5%. And there is a limit on concessional or pre-tax contributions of $25,000 per financial year. Now, there is something called the carry forward rule, and it allows you to contribute unused concessional contributions from the previous financial year in subsequent ones. So let's say you don't put in that full 25,000 this year, you'll be able to carry forward the unused bit. So let's say you only put in 15,000. Well, you can take that 10,000 and use it in subsequent years, up to 5 years. And this is particularly useful to freelancers because you have considerable fluctuations in your income from year to year. So in bumper years, you could top up a little bit more. And if you want to know more about that, I'm happy to talk to you a bit more about that offline. But in bumper years, if you, and sometimes I hear members say that they weren't aware that they could claim a tax deduction for personal contributions. But really, it's just a simple form that you get from the ATO website. And if you just Google ATO super contribution form, you'll find it. Now, I'm getting close to wrapping up, but what else can you do to get your super in shape and get on the road to a comfortable retirement? Well, I think that there's 6 key things. And one is understand your super. And what I mean by this is know what investment option you're in, what kind of fees you're paying, and what kind of returns you're getting. And just remember that the numbers behind the decimal point, they count. So I just use this example because I was doing it for something else, so I had the figures. But so if you had a balance of 100,000 and you looked at an average performing fund return over the past 7 years at 7.03%, and then you compared it, say, to MediaSuper at 7.56%, over 20 years, we're looking at a difference between 389,000 versus 429,000. That's $40,000 difference. So that's almost 1 year of comfy retirement for a single person. So think of all that bottled wine that you could be having. The second thing that you could do is consolidate your super. Roughly 1/3 of Australians have more than one super account. And because freelancers can easily slip in and out of periods of full-time employment, they can easily end up with more than one account. And this means having one or more account, it means that you're going to have more than one set of fees. And remember that compound interest exercise that we just did. Imagine $1,500 coming off your super every year. And what that's going to add up to over 20 years. And people with multiple funds or multiple accounts, they're also potentially being charged multiple insurance premiums, being just deducted straight out of their super. And this could be a real waste of money, particularly when it comes to income protection insurance. And just because you have more than one policy, that doesn't mean that you can be sitting at home with your leg in a cast, drinking a glass of Pinot and watching Netflix and collecting 2 sets of benefit payments. It doesn't necessarily work like this. So consolidating super, like I said, or I said something about contributions, but consolidating super, it's never been easier. So you can do it through your superfund, or you can do it through the MyGov website. And there's no longer any exit fees for leaving a fund. So if you're one of these people with multiple funds, and if you take away one thing today, it's get off your butt and combine your super. Third thing that you should do is review your insurance. MediaSuper and other funds as well, they provide a default level of insurance. So death cover, permanent and total and permanent disability, and income protection insurance. So, and you get it automatically when you sign up. Now, if you don't want it, you can cancel it or change the level of cover. And income protection, though, it's a particularly important consideration for freelancers because you're not accumulating sick leave. And if you get sick or injured, you can't do your job. And if you can't work, you can't earn. And the maximum Centrelink disability support payment, it's only $944 per fortnight. Imagine the fun of trying to apply for that on a drip from a hospital bed. I've worked in income protection insurance for a decade, and I've seen all the emails and letters and cards thanking us for saving the house, or I don't know what we would have done if it weren't for income protection. Real goosebumpy, tear to your eye kind of stuff. So I'm a huge believer. And one of the cool things about MediaSuper, sorry for the little plug here, but I think it's worth mentioning, is that our income protection benefit can go up to 5 years or to age 65, whereas a lot of income protection policies, both in and outside of super, will provide only a 2-year benefit. So check your insurance levels. Your circumstances may have changed and the amount of the level of insurance that you have, it might not be adequate for your present needs, or it may be too much. The fourth thing that you need to look at is topping up your super, and we've already talked about that. So do it. And if you can't do the full 9.5%, something is definitely better than nothing. And if you're earning less than $40,000 a year, it's actually a little bit less than that, but it's just easy to remember. $40,000 a year. There are some programs that can add a bit to your super, such as the low-income super tax offset or the government co-contributions, as well as spouse contributions or contribution sharing. And I'll include some info on that in the email I send. So, if you're just working part-time or had a bit of a less work on, you might qualify for those. And the fifth thing that you can do is speak to the experts. I'm a big believer that you're never too young to start getting financial advice. In MediaSuper, look, we don't have a monopoly on this, but we offer different levels of financial advice. And a lot of it's absolutely free. So there's a bunch of phone-based advice that regarding investment options or insurance levels, contribution levels, so that kind of stuff. And of course, there's retirement seminars that go into a whole lot more detail than what I'm blabbing on about today. And most super funds, including MediaSuper, will have financial advisors. So getting that strategic financial advice. And these advisors, they're the people that will help you get to where you want to go in retirement. They're the ones that will help you get to the 8th arrondissement. And they put together a comprehensive financial plan that takes into account your personal circumstances and it helps to provide a roadmap on how to get where you want to be in retirement. So I get people calling me up all the time saying, "Hey, Erik, I'm going to retire in 2 months. I want to meet with one of your financial advisors." Well, that's great and all, but I was just thinking, mate, we really should have had this conversation 10 years ago. And finally, the sixth thing that you can do is choose the fund that's right for you. And back to screen sharing here, sorry about this. And what you want to ask yourself is, do they help support my community or my industries? And are they profit to member funds, or are they profit to shareholders? You want to find out about the fees and what's the performance like, and if there's any insurance that's provided. And the thing that I like to tell people is just find out if they have anything to sell you. Like are there any commissions for the services that they offer? Are they going to charge you for financial advice that you don't necessarily use? So.
Hi, Erik. Is that meant to be blank, that screen?
No.
Oh, okay. I can't see anything. I assume the others can't either.
Well, okay. Thank you for that.
We saw all the other ones though.
Well, that's good. Let me just try again. I'm clicking furiously on the resume share button, but to no avail.
I think it might have frozen.
Let's just try a new share.
If not, you've got those slides available. I can put up in the chat, have you?
Yeah, look, and there's nothing that's terribly, we don't need to do them. So look, it is sort of stuck. But look, I wanted to touch a little bit on this COVID-19 early release of super. So I think it's something that's particularly pertinent to freelancers and people who are working on their own. And one thing that I really want to drill home is that super is a long-term investment. And it's for your future. It's not a present. And we've heard a lot of people about people accessing it when they shouldn't be. And look, as an industry, I think we stand pretty united in asserting that super really shouldn't be dipped into, full stop. And it should be retained for retirement only. And I'm not going to pretend that it hasn't been an absolute godsend for some families, but I'm just not sure that by opening that can of worms and dipping into super is really that prudent. So now I can't share this slide with you, but unless you wanted to try to share it, Sue, did you?
Yeah, send it through. And maybe while you're doing that, you can answer a couple of questions that came through. Nina was asking, what should a freelancer do if they feel their employer hasn't paid super when they should have?
Right, well, that's a good question. So on the links that I'm going to send around to you, there is a link with the ATO that tells you exactly what to do if you feel that super should have been paid and hasn't been. So and to be honest with you, it's going to be something that you have to probably fight for. I seriously doubt it's going to be as simple as an email, but just be prepared that you might have to do some toing and froing to get that money back. But look, the taking money out of super, it's going to have a bit more of an effect on people that are younger. If you took that $20,000 out, and so what the government statistics say is that if you take that $20,000 out now, it's going to end up with a close to $50,000 less in retirement. But one thing that I will say is that these figures are in today's dollars, and they'd be much higher if we, something more in the vein of the compound interest calculator that we did earlier. And even if you're 55 and you take this money out, it's going to result in a significantly lower super balance as well. So you'd still have $25,000 less by the time you reach retirement age. Well, if we said 65 or 67. And again, that's a lot of bottled wine. And the other thing that I just wanted to point out with regard to this early access to super, early withdrawal from super, is that it could have some other implications as well. So for example, if your balance drops below $6,000 as a result of taking this money out, your insurance could be canceled. So I just want you to remember that super is a long-term investment. And sure, it's your money, but it's your money for your future. And I just want to wrap up with, what does the future of superannuation look like? And if the past is any indication, the future of super will be marked by considerable and constant change. And there's a growing concern about the changing nature of work and its potential effect on pension systems and retirement outcomes. And it's drawing increasing attention from governments across OECD countries. In Australia, ASFA, and more recently, the Actuaries Institute has called for changes to super to accommodate a workforce with an increasing number of self-employed people, so an increasing number of freelancers. And this is something that's been advocated by me as well. So we can expect also in the future an increased focus on technology and data, and with the idea of creating a better member experience and increasing member engagement as well. So, and one of the things that I think is pretty cool is that we'll likely see an uptake in apps that allow us to round up purchases as micro contributions. So, for example, 25 cents from that $4.75 coffee can go straight into super. Another thing that we'll probably see is fewer super funds as pressures mount from regulatory agencies to reduce operating costs and lower member fees. And the future it's likely to bring an expanded focus, an increased focus on ESG, or environmental, social, and governance standards, and an expanded commitment to the UN's principles of responsible investing. And an offshoot of this could be a rating system or a tick of approval designating or rating a fund's sustainability credentials. And all of this stuff would be really great. But what would be really nice if politicians, present and future, stop using superannuation as a political football and just recognize the vital role that super, particularly industry super, play in creating a better nation through all these investments that provide much needed infrastructure and jobs to thousands of Australians. So, and let's hope that the future means not reversing legislation that increases the super guarantee to 12% by 2025. this is a much needed reform to ensure that older Australians aren't left behind in retirement, and that more older people have a comfortable retirement. And what I'm really hoping for the future of superannuation, and I speak for all of my colleagues at MediaSuper, is for a fairer superannuation system, for a step change in closing the gender superannuation gap. We know that women have a much lower balance at retirement, and this is unconscionable that our mothers, sisters, partners, and daughters should be left behind. So the future is now, and now's really the time to extend paid superannuation to maternity leave and other measures that promote gender equity in super. So that's all for me.
That's great, Erik. There's a few questions, but I know that you were, we've got the booking for you that I've put in the chat, but you might want to have a quick look in the chat yourself to see whether there is something you would like to answer, or would you prefer that people contact you directly?
Look, I'm happy for both. You know, one thing for everyone out there today, one thing that I did with Sue many months ago is we sat down and had a look at her super statement, and I was able to explain a lot of things that she had questions about, various fees that might be kind of, I don't know, difficult to explain, I suppose. So everyone that attended the festival is more than happy to contact me, and we can have a chat about super. I can answer any of your questions that you have, that, you know, general questions that are more specific to you. But if there's any questions that anyone wants to put it quickly on the Q&A, I saw that Aviv had put regular deposits. Is that annual or monthly? Well, I think the more regular, the better. So, and we saw in that compound interest exercise that if you put it in monthly, that's going to be a lot more beneficial over time.
Someone also had a question: after 67, should they, if they're still freelancing, should they continue to contribute to super? Adeline asked that question.
Definitely. And there's other ways that you can contribute to, especially, and this is something that you would want to speak more to a financial advisor about, but not only are there concessional contributions, but you might, you know, sometimes people will come into money through inheritance and for various reasons. And so you might even look at putting in a non-concessional or after-tax money into super, but that's something more that you'd have a chat with a financial advisor about.
And Corrine has a question about a lot of Australians spending time abroad and build up super. In, say, in the UK, when she returned to Australia, it was impossible to find a QUROP. I don't know what that means, but I'm sure you can explain that. Yeah,
look, transferring super over to from foreign superannuation funds or pension account, it's a little bit of work. I'm not sure when Corrine tried to do that, but it's a bit simpler now. We do have some, especially with countries like the UK, it's a little bit easier. New Zealand as well. It's the problem with New Zealand, for example, is a lot of funds won't accept Kiwi savers, despite it being perfectly easy to do so. But who knows, that might change. But that's something that if you wanted to bring money over from a foreign pension account or superannuation account, that's something that your fund can definitely help you with. It's just one of those things that we don't deal with every day. So it's probably need to have a one-on-one consultation there.
Yeah, and I've put all your details, including your phone number, into the chat. And also it's on the website that you can book Erik directly.
That's right.
So we've gone, that was really interesting, Erik. We've gone over time, as you suspected might happen, because there'd be lots of questions. I don't know if there's a last thing you'd like to say before we wrap it up.
The only other thing I would say, Sue, is thank you very much for having me. And look, it's a brand new financial year. So good chance to make a New Year's resolution to get on top of your super and just have a look at it. There's some anecdotal evidence that people that even just check their balances more frequently will have better outcomes. So I really encourage you to, a lot of people don't even know how to log into their super account. So if you do anything today, go find out how you can log into your super account online and check what your balance is. And hopefully you're pleasantly surprised. So please get in touch, and I will send all these links around quite soon. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Erik. And I'll be putting those links up if we put them in the chat or by a follow-up email. So either way, you'll be able to get those slides. Yeah, that was great. Thank you, Erik. And right now we've got a break again for about 20 minutes. We went a little over, but that was such an interesting conversation and really, really important, particularly with the nightmare that's going on with people getting in trouble for withdrawing super they shouldn't have withdrawn. So it's a really important conversation to have. And what I would like to do now is just, tell you to go and have a break. Well, not tell you, but, go and have a break. Move around a little bit again. We've got a great relaxation exercise coming up with Claire Bell, who's a yoga specialist, and she's going to be taking us through some relaxation techniques that are really important in a stressful time. And that's starting in about 20 minutes. So yeah, if you want to join that, please feel free. Otherwise, we have Esther and Denise starting with Media Mentors workshop at 1 o'clock. So either come back at 20 to 1 and do some relaxation, or take that extra time and have some lunch and then come back at 1 o'clock. All right, well, thank you. And thanks, Erik.
Thank you. Cheers.